All right. How many of us recollect this popular movie back in 2004? So which movie is that? iRobot. So this is an interesting movie, right? It's an action-packed thriller, and it talks about the rise of robots. And popularly, the NS5 robots were deployed for protecting human, serving human. And then there's a lot of story. Will Smith gets into this, right? The investigation of a scientist, and then it all rolls about. So the bottom line is this movie was all about rise of robots. And this is where we are today with the rise of AI agents, right? So there's a multifold deployment of AI agents across many real world use cases, right? Many a times we do not know if you are talking to a human or you are talking to an AI agent for our real world use cases. Now, when I was looking into this topic, I was also looking into the various cloud providers. Now, we also see a cloud adoption at scale across the enterprises. So every enterprise is getting into one of these cloud providers, and you also have many other cloud providers. And these are the top 3 industry cloud providers, right? We have Azure, AWS, and GCP. And so I was looking at what each of these cloud providers are doing at scale, meeting their operational needs. How are they bringing in efficiency? Because previously mentioned in his keynote speak, SRE is evolving, right? You have multiple models coming out. Previously, we used to be called production support, and then we moved into an embedded SRE. Now with cloud, there is also a lot of models around the central SRE, and then he also touched upon the central SRE model. Now what it means, evolved central SRE model is you have to perform SRE functions across multi-cloud workloads, right? So as a SRE team, you are expected to handle multi-cloud SRE operations and also handle multiple critical applications. So now if you look at each of these cloud providers, you look at Google. Google is one of the pioneer who brought in concept of site reliability engineering, right? And Google does not offer a dedicated SRE agent, but it embeds its SRE concepts in all of its offerings, right? With Duet AI, Gemini, it integrates the AI offerings into multiple of its products. Now you also look into Amazon AWS. Amazon provides a platform and also a marketplace for you to build AI agents, right? So many third-party providers have built and deployed AI agents that you can use for your purpose. Now the next is basically the interesting use case, right? Azure in May launched an Azure SRE agent. So they initially launched it for a preview, and now it is publicly available. And the next slide I have is basically a demo, right, of what the SRE agent does, because that will give you a clear idea of what is evolving in the SRE space, right? When we talk about the evolved central SRE model, this is all that we are going to bring in, because you have to handle multiple workloads, but how do you bring that efficiency within the teams? Not growing your team size, but handling multiple workloads. So the next slide. So this is basically a 3-minute demo. So basically this is also publicly available. You can also watch in the Azure SRE agent site, right? So when you look at this, right, you will know what the agents for SRE is coming out to.
SRE agent is an AI.
So audio. So didn't. No, I think I need to. Where is this link?
SRE agent is an AI-powered tool for incident response. It's designed to reduce tedious steps and speed up recovery. Building apps is fun, but once they're live in the cloud, challenge. I'll start with this common scenario. I'm on call for this app. It's called Octopus, Airbnb, but for pets. It's a full stack application, front end, back end APIs, and data. A PagerDuty alert fires late at night. My site's listings page is returning errors. Maybe the API is not working. Typically, I'll have a runbook of mitigations to bring the app back up and running, like restarting the app, scaling out a container, or rolling back to a previously working deployment. You can see that our API is down with 500 errors. And my runbook is coming along with the incident. Now I'm going to use SRE agent to handle this incident automatically without having to wake up at 2 a.m. while following the same mitigation actions I would have taken on my own. I can see that the PagerDuty alert fired, and SRE agent has acknowledged the incident on my behalf because I configured it that way. Now it's executing my runbook instructions. It looks at the error metrics and shows 500 errors. Next, it'll look for correlations between the 500 errors and other activities in the logs. It's even generating charts. Because of the policy that I set, the agent can perform that rollback automatically, safely, and quickly, without escalation. The SRE agent tries to optimize for the best mean time to resolution, so that my team and I can mitigate the issue as fast as possible, get the app up and running, and then later I'll investigate the underlying root cause. It even generates a GitHub issue with full documentation for the entire incident. Great, the site's back up, and now let's look at something more complex and subtle. Listings worse. But details is slow. Users are probably seeing timeouts. It's not really clear what's wrong. Maybe the API. There's a hang. Let's go and ask SRE agent. First, I'll say, install the Octopet containers apps. Now, I'll say, the Octopet's backend has been slow for a while. Can you help investigate? Find the root cause and give me recommendations on how to fix. My chat has kicked off an investigation into the slowness of the back end. It's analyzing CPU, memory, and the request metrics for the last 30 minutes. Hang on, in the middle of my chat, a PagerDuty incident was reported. The same issue. SRE agent is actually visualizing the errors in my back end. You can see that it's created a correlated chart showing deployments against the error count. And it automatically found the out-of-memory exception errors. Turns out, function called for a really expensive operation that was causing errors. And it actually scaled out the app to mitigate the memory issue. It's filed a GitHub issue with all the details. The resource group, the subscription, the time the incident happened, and even a stack trace with the root cause. I'm in control, 100% hands-on, using the agent's analysis as guidance, or let the agent make some decisions for me, following my runbook. That's SRE agent, AI-powered incident response management.
Yeah. So this is a very good illustration of how you can use SRE agents in your operations, right? So basically, it can tick as the signals arrive with your telemetry data. It could be your logs, your metrics, and then it can get into action. So the most happiest person will be the on-call SREs when you get this into action, right? And you also have approval workflows. So basically, if you want to do it in a controlled fashion, you can get manual intervention. So it can do all the analysis, get things ready for you, and then you do an overview, and then you can get into action, right? So you can approve it to proceed with the action. So this is actually a good way of not only giving you illustrations of what is happening, it is also triggering your workflows to basically resolve the incidents automatically, right? So that is what is evolving with all of the AI agents' capabilities. And so this could be for an on-call triggering your bridge. It could be for pod restarts, recycling. It could be looking into what is happening in terms of your infrastructure. Say, for example, you are looking into for a major event, like it could be a Thanksgiving Day, a Cyber Monday. It could look at all your infra patterns and then also recommend you with scaling or sizing so that you can avoid some of these outages in first place, right? So these are like some of the actual use cases. Now, the first thing I looked at is around the cloud provider, and then I was looking at the observability platforms, right? The enterprises, we use major providers, and if you look at the Gartner's Magic Quadrant, the top 4 providers are Dynatrace, Datadog, you have Grafana Labs, and New Relic, right? So these are like the major providers. Big companies can afford but there are equivalent open source that every companies use. And during my interactions with the startups, right, they are also picking each problems and working on an AI agent to resolve, right? So if you look at these major providers, I was looking at what are the AI agents each of these providers offer. Now, if you look at Dynatrace has an inbuilt AI powered, so its core AI engine revolves around Davis AI. Davis AI offers a lot of this agentic capabilities. So you can do with your natural language. So you can query, you can generate queries, you can analyze, and it does all of the causal, right? So see what it happens is all this helps in reducing the MTTR, keeping your critical systems up and running, and also generating a lot of revenue. So Datadog uses Bits AI as its core agentic platform, and Labs has come out with Grafana Assistant. So this is really interesting. When I was reading through this, they also have the MCP server. So you basically come in with your tools, your organizational tools, and then you just plug into the MCP servers as a tools, and then you start using this assistant, right? And then similarly, New Relic has an AI agent by itself called as New Relic AI. Formerly it was Relic Grok, and offers a lot of these agent capabilities. Now, you may wonder what are the various use cases. So you looked at the Azure SRE agent, what it was doing. It was picking the signal and then acting on it, triggering the run book, executing the workflow, and then resolving, right? Before even somebody notices it, right? Tomorrow the SRE may log in the morning and he sees all of these actions performed by the agent themselves. Now, so these are as SREs, DevOps professionals, right? You may wonder what are the various use cases where we can develop, build, and deploy agents. So these are like pretty much the major use cases that is being used in the industry, right? If you look at, so predominantly, this use cases help empower the SREs and DevOps and bring in a lot of efficiency. For example, right, the first use case is around causal analysis. Say, for example, you have an incident, right? You have a major P1 or P2 incident. Say your e-commerce, I'm part of the e-commerce SRE team. Say the e-commerce website is down, right? The customers are not able to proceed with their purchase of the vehicles. Now, as an SRE, right, we get paged, and then, so the best thing an SRE could get is if you can narrow down on what is the cause for that outage, right? The major outage. And as SREs, we expect failures, right? So we have to be prepared for failure scenario. And if you can get to the bottom of the cause in a quick fashion, like Hemant mentioned, in the next 5 minutes, 10 minutes, if you can get to the bottom of the cause, what is causing your outage, you can directly work on resolving and bringing the websites as quickly as possible. So the causal analysis is basically the most important use case. And then if you look at the other use cases, right, automated incident management, the Azure SRE agent is a very good example of how you can perform an automated incident management. There's a lot of concepts around self-healing, right? When there is a CPU and memory thresholds going above the thresholds, if you have a runbook of recycling your parts, the agent can get into action and recycle your parts before even somebody notices an outage. And anomaly detection and correlation, so this is very important, right? So this is one of the area that, if you ask me, a bigger challenge in our landscape is when you get into diverse distributed systems, clouds, on-prem systems. Now what happens is there's a lot of signals across, right? You have metrics, traces, and logs. And how do you correlate many of these? Is an outage due to my deployments, or is it due to a planned activity? How do you correlate? So this can correlate with multiple signals and detect, pinpoint where the anomaly is, and then it can help you narrow down on the causal. And then most of these agents, right, it's basically supporting the natural language. So you can interact with it. For example, I ask it how many 5xx errors I got in the last 24 hours. Can you analyze the pattern over the last 28 days? Give me some of the recommendations. So it can tag into your knowledge base and then give you recommendations and all that stuff, right? These are like very good use cases. And the other one, very close to my heart in my area, is around the reduction of noise. As SREs, we set up log-based alerts, metric-based alerts. There's huge amount of these alerts on a daily basis, right? How do you segregate the noise and act on the real ones? That is going to be a bigger challenge as we grow. And now we are talking about agents, right? It's not only what we have instrumented, it's also the agents. Now, how do you get visibility into the agents' actions? So I think those are like some of the things that we will also need to answer as we go along. And the last one is around predictive analysis. So this is where some of these humanly actions are not possible, right? For example, we may look into an outage, we will get to the bottom of the root cause, but how do you predict what will happen, say 7 days down the line or 30 days down the line, right? Or say, for example, I have a major event coming up. How do I even know if my sizing is okay based on the pattern? So this is where AI helps the SRE teams to a greater extent, right? So you can look into your infrastructure parameters, see if the sizing, so you can predict saying that at this going rate, you may scale out at say 6 days, 7 days, and then it can give you recommendations. So this is very helpful for seasonal events. For example, major sales campaigns, Thanksgiving Day, your Dark Friday events and all that, right? So these are like some of the use cases, real-time use cases that we use. And so we were also looking into some of our own problems, right, in our ecosystem. So one of the challenge we have is basically we generate a lot of logs, right, in terms of our systems, ecosystem. If you look at the data, so we have around 5+ TB of logs almost generated every month. And then there's a lot of alerts, 20 to 30K alerts that we generate. Our SRE teams have to skim through for them to identify the real issues. And then on an average, like in the industry, we get around 5 to 6 P1, P2 incidents, right, in our ecosystem. Now, with all this, how do you get a 30% reduction in your overall resolution times and 30% less in your overall toil, right? So this is where we have developed, built, and deployed one of the SRE agent in our ecosystem. We have coined the name as Kaidu. So it's basically, we have integrated it with the logs. So it can track through all the log events, also correlate with our knowledge base. And we have got some impressive benefits so far, right? If you look at, so we've got around 50% reduction in the overall causal investigation, right? So the root cause analysis has come down. And then there is also a 30% reduction in the overall triage duration. So these are like some of the real benefits that you get as you develop and build the agents. But the only key thing is that has to be, you have to identify your key problem areas and then develop and build on top of it. And this also helped us over the last year or so to meet our MTTX goals, which are very stringent in the e-commerce space. And definitely it has increased our productivity overall. And then there's also, as we grow into a evolved central SRE model, this is also going to help us to handle more workloads. So now we looked into various cloud providers, the APM solutions that we have in hand, and you also develop agents, right? Now, this is something that is happening in the industry, right? Everyone is developing and building agents for, it could be a simple to a large complex problem, right? So everybody have started to build, deploy. Now, so this is where I was looking at, and everybody is learning down the line, right? As you build and develop, deploy, you learn some lessons. So this is where I was looking at if there is some lessons that we can learn from the industry, right? Before we go through the same phase and then learn. So I was looking at an article from McKinsey published by Quantum Black. So they have looked into the last 1 year deployment of agents, predominantly from McKinsey. So they have looked into high value agentic AI deployments, around 50 of them. And they've also looked into various other agentic AI deployments across the industry. Now they have come up with the 6 lessons, right? What we as industry SREs can learn and adopt and not go through the same phase and learn, right? So that is going to be the key. Maybe I'll go through each of them, right? The first one is basically, it's not about the agent, it's about the workflow. So it is basically about the real problem, right? What is the business problem that you have in your hand? So it is about transforming your workflows, right? Not just building the latest technology agents for something you may not be transforming. So you have to go through your business problem, identify what is the transformation that you want into your end-to-end workflows, and then develop on your agents. So that is going to be the key. Most of the time what is happening is people start building the agents and then try to retrofit into a business problem, right? So that is what is the actual lesson here. Number two, this is very much the key. Now what happens is when everybody goes behind agents, there is a tendency that we also develop agents, but sometimes then we find that a simple automation could have solved the problem, right? We may not even need an agentic AI solution for it, but we have gone through that path. Just look into if you really need an agentic AI to solve your problem, right? If it is an end-to-end use case, for example, if it could be a travel use case, right? You want to have a travel agent, you call in, and then you are able to have multiple other agents like checking destination of preference, where the cost of airfares are low, and so on, right? So it can trigger multiple agents and then get you to an optimal travel destination. So those are like some of the end-to-end use cases where you really need some of these agentic functions. And the third one is really interesting, right? They call it as stop AI slop. It's basically, don't go with some of these low quality deployments, right? People develop and hurry in a way to deploy some of these. And what happens is once you deploy and then the users start to use, they don't find it really beneficial, right? So then there is a lack in trust or lack of trust among the users. And many a times they revert back to their original processes, right? So that is where you have to really understand the problem, ensure that you have a solid tested agentic AI solution deployed, and then it is ready for use for the users. And then the other key, right? Now it is going to be not single agents, right? So an agent may be talking to multiple agents. Now how do you review and observe each of their agentic actions? So you have to have monitoring observability set up even for the agentic functions for you to know where the problem is happening. So you have to have a monitoring observability built on top of the agentic AI, which is going to be the future. Now the last two is basically around, so this is a standard thing, right? Because the best use case is to reuse, not keep on developing new agents, right? So I think that is going to add your cost. So this is something that we need to keep in mind. And the last one, I think this is the most debatable topic, right? There's a lot of alarm in the industry also is the agents are going to replace humans. Definitely there is going to be some change in what we will be doing and what the agents will be doing. Some of the routine monotonous tasks where you can automate, where you can have runbooks, all this maybe the agents will perform, but where the humans will be involved is more value added work, right? I think defining, designing agents and deploying them. So the nature of work is going to shift between the agent and the human, right? So the human AI partnership is going to evolve as we grow. Right, so this is, so now looking into all so these are like 6 takeaways I want to conclude. So the first one is basically around the SREday agents are your co-pilots, right? So they are like your assistants helping you navigate some of the work that will help you to fashion things, right? They are not your replacements, they are your actual co-pilots. The second is basically as SREs, we have to move from firefighting. I know we have the responsibility of incident response, but move from firefighting mode to more of a proactive and intelligent manner, basically predicting what is going to happen, and that is where all the value lies. The third one is basically around tangible benefits. Definitely you can expect a lot of improvement in your mean time to resolution, your incident diagnosis. You can also, in terms of efficiency, the routine monotonous tasks, you can have efficiencies built in. The next one is basically you have to look for some of these strategic. So I mentioned about end-to-end use cases where this can really contribute, right? So you have to look into your evolving workflows and then ensure that you build an agents across end-to-end. The last is basically, so this is the rapid happening space, right? So you have to evolve at speed, and you have to act now, right? So if you can start working on building your data pipelines, where understanding your problems, and then also upskill your own teams, right? Because this is a rapidly developing space, and you have to upskill your teams basically to meet these needs. So these are like some of the key takeaways and what is happening around the agentic AI space in the SRE. Thank you.